I often say dwarfs are the best shooting faction in the game, and these guys right here, the iconic rune-inscribed Dawi cannons, are a huge part of that, and definitely, in my opinion, the best cannon-type artillery in the game. There's a few reasons for that, but we'll get back to that in just a minute here. In terms of the build and players and matchup and so on, this is indeed Game 3 between Butcherbird and Unreal Expectations. Butcherbird coming in with the Dwarfs, Unreal Expectations, Lizardmen. We've got Chameleon Skinks up front, a couple of Skink Chiefs, and Lord Mazdamundi. Red Cress, 5 Red Cress and 4 Javelins, so definitely a Skink build with a couple Feral Bastillodons. On the Dwarfs side, we've got a bunch of Dwarf Warriors, Thunderers, Trollhammer Torpedoes in the center, 2 cannons protected by 2 Slayers, and yeah, the Rune Lord is the only hero, interestingly enough, so no Death Hero Squad. We've got Feral Cold Ones out there in the woods as well. So cannons, why do I say they're the best? Well, 800 points, they're cheaper than something like a Warp Lightning Cannon. They have magic resistance, which is actually, in artillery fights, surprisingly important, considering how often you'll see like Spirit Leech, Fireball, other magic spells be used to try and combat cannons. I need to do some checking on this, but I believe this does apply to the actual pieces themselves. Even regardless, though, like Spirit Leeching the crew or whatever else, having that magic resistance you wouldn't think is a big deal, but it actually is quite helpful. Of course, 440 range as well. Their missile damage, DPS on paper is not amazing, but in fact can be quite impactful, given that they are quite accurate when compared to something like, you know, zombie carronades. But Rush is on. Lizardmen compromising lines, getting some Red Crest up and around the flank here, getting into those Thunderers. That is really, really good stuff. But Mazdamundi being focused by the cannons right now. Well, one of them at least. The other one going after that Feral Bastillodon. Already managed to force it into an enrage, and that's the thing. Just that long-range, consistent, armor-piercing pressure. It's defining for the Dwarfs, right? Like, it defines many matchups and often how players approach playing the faction. It's such an iconic unit, and so good at the same time. It more or less fulfills what it's supposed to. Yeah, blasting charges throwing in here. Just roasting those red-crested skinks. Feral Cold Ones get a nice charge, trying to get on those Trollhammer torpedoes, but it's a little bit late at this point. Mazdamundi's taking a lot of damage, and you can see the Slayers, like, you know, danger close, protecting the cannon here. We've got some Longbeards in here as well, protecting. So the cannon crew's able to stay online, and just a couple shots more will finish off Mazdamundi. There he goes. Nice shot, boys. That is finished there. This other cannon's still online here. And the Skink Rush, they just have a lot of ranged units to compromise. And the leadership is starting to fall apart a little bit. As you can see, the Feral Cold Ones running away. Some of the Red Crests starting to run away. And the focused fire, even though a lot of ranged units have been tied down, the cannons are still left free. They can definitely put out some legit damage. It's interesting to me that... Oh, man, right in the face. Good shot, boys. That must have hurt poor Bastillodon boy. He probably didn't deserve that, but hey, that's just how it goes. This other cannon, too, somehow still online. Look at this protection, man. These Slayers just forming a ring of Mohawks around this cannon here, allowing it to potentially keep shooting. I don't know. These models where the Slayers are literally standing in front of them, I don't think they can continue shooting, but at this point, they've dealt with most of the monstrous presence. There's just this one Feral Bastillodon left. Bounce power still pretty close, though, as the Skink Chiefs will help hold the leadership together. There's still a lot of ammunition on those Chameleon Skinks as well, and the Dwarven lines starting to give out. Most of the Thunder has been compromised at this point. This one cannon... Yeah, one cannon goes down there. It's still somehow holding out. Oh man, is he manually firing these into the Skinks right here? I'd be very impressed if that was the case. I doubt it. But, does look like they're just firing at whatever targets at this point. This one here has the opportunity to crossfire against the Bastillodon, but it looks like Chameleon Skinks finally coming in and targeting the crew directly, shutting them down. Might have, from a, kind of a player's perspective here, it would have been nice for the Lizardmen to try and focus the cannons potentially a little bit earlier, but credit to Butcherbird for keeping them well protected up until this point. You can see that those Skinks do eventually lose out, and even still, I mean, These Dawi just resolutely sticking to their guns, even as they're getting dragged down by poisonous skinks. One of these guns still firing out in the distance, getting some solid damage on the Feral Bastillodon. The attacked by artillery leadership debuff as well, very critical here. And this other crew somehow survives all of that mess earlier and is still here to reman their guns. Feral Bastillodon getting lit up by the remainder of the Trollhammer torpedoes. That's another big benefit of Dwarven cannons, why I put them above other cannons for other factions, is the leadership, too, of the crew is higher than many other crews. Obviously, zombies will just crumble, and Empire crews, they have okay leadership, but Dawi crews are a little bit more likely to come back and in the late game actually be able to contribute, which is certainly important. Right now, getting this guy back online, it's a backbreaker for Lizardmen. But even if they chase all this routing stuff off, the whole time they're just going to be taking ranged pressure, and these Red Crests here and all these low leadership skinks, they can't take too much more ranged pressure. That attacked by artillery leadership debuff will be enough to largely rout them. So, yeah, cannons, great against most things. They also make great anti-tank guns, as imagine. I found out the hard way. But look at that. Even with non-direct line of fire, they do have a slight arc. It's not like Warp Lightning cannons where they literally fire in a straight line. They do have a little bit of an arc, can fire up and over this little knoll here where Zlak's body is laying. He's just sleeping. He's just sleeping. Anyway, we'll fast forward a little bit as the Dawi cannons finish the day here. They started the day, they're going to finish the day. Skinks, Chameleon Skinks do have missile resistance, but it only does so much when something does enough overall missile damage to just one-shot the model. Oh man, cannons too, the fact that they like bounce and like pass through models, absolutely brutal. Absolutely brutal. Will definitely just rip apart multi-model units. They say anti-large on the tooltip, but really they can be used against just about any targets. I mean, really, really fantastic at shooting everything. They're kind of the Swiss Army knife of artillery. Yes, especially probably their best targets are cavalry units, because they are, you know, lower model count and the missile damage is enough to one-shot the cavalry models. But just generally good against most targets. I would say typically, I don't love shooting single entities with them, but here, in this case, they were able to kind of contribute along with some other ranged units to quickly burst Mazdamundi and get him off the field. And I mean, just shooting the most expensive target, it's not like Unreal Expectations Lizardman build here. He really didn't have any units that were expensive at all besides Mazdamundi, so it makes sense from that perspective. Just focus Mazdamundi with the cannons, with the one of them at least, just because, yeah, he's the most expensive target on the field. There's not really a lot else that's worth shooting at with them. I mean, the other Bastillodons, yes, but they're even cheaper than the cannon itself, so if you do take them out, it's not like that's great value. But they do manage to both accrue their value over the course of the game. Again, credit to Butcherbird, great job by him keeping him protected. Good game to Unreal as well. Ended up being pretty close there at the end. Definitely could have gone either way. But, yeah. Dwarf Warriors and Longbeards doing a good job defending. Slayers especially. Thunderers, some of them pay for themselves, 2 of them did not. The Iron Drake's got some real damage in there, too. I mean, I've talked about these guys before. Trollhammer torpedoes, very essential unit for the dwarfs in a lot of matchups. But both the cannons, really nice performance. And at 800 points, again, not the most expensive. They're not the cheapest either, but we'll look at that in just a second here. Unreal's side here. The Feral Bastillodon's actually not paying out. They're not that expensive, but DPS output isn't actually that good either. Chameleon Skinks do really nicely, as do the Red Crest. This is maybe the best matchup for Red Crest, but the Longbeards will trade good against them, and even the Slayers kind of trade okay into the Red Crest as well. Javelins do a good job. Yeah, Mazdamundi just getting bunker busted was definitely the backbreaker. But anyway, let's talk about some cannons for just a moment here. So really the Empire and Vampire Coast cannons are the most comparable, right? But we'll also bring in Warp Lightning Cannon here, just as a little bit of a side comparison. So the Dawi Cannon, let's see, 800 points, same as the Empire Great Cannon. And if we take a look at the differences, a Great Cannon actually slightly longer damage, and it says slightly higher missile damage. Let's look at the breakdown here. 19.8, 88, 352. So that's 336, 84. So yeah, it is slightly lower missile damage overall, but Dwarven cannons, to me, seem more accurate. They feel more accurate. I would need to kind of break down and do some testing and maybe look in the files to see if that is the case, but I want to say they are more accurate. And then, of course, you have the magic resistance as well. Look at that, 14 extra leadership, too. And 20 armor, still not amazing. 40 armor, they're one of the lightest units in terms of armor that the Dawi can actually bring. But, yeah, I mean, they have a little bit better melee stats, too. They actually do have some melee stats. 20 melee defense for an artillery crew is not bad at all, compared to the Empire artillery crew, at least. And, yeah, I mean, 10 range and that little bit of extra missile damage really isn't enough to make that much of a difference. You compare them to the Coast artillery here, the 700 cost carronades. Carronades are cheaper, 750 now, rather. Not that much cheaper, though. And again, a little bit longer range, same missile damage as the Dawi cannons though, and they do get the extra powder. While that's active, they can potentially get a little bit higher missile damage, but the accuracy is not nearly as good as the Dwarven cannons. They are still fantastic, definitely a defining unit for the Vampire Coast. But there you go. You can refill their ammo as well, which is not something the dwarfs currently have access to. I would love for the dwarfs to be able to get that some point with some character, but anyway. And then for the Skaven, of course, Warp Lightning Cannons, significantly more expensive. They have the magic damage and explosion. They're kind of more anti-large focused as well, right? They 70 bonus versus large on that. The other thing, too, about them is their hitboxes are ginormous, so they get hit by literally everything. Versus the Dawi cannons, a smaller hitbox, I believe, even than these two other cannons as well. So there's that to consider in an artillery fight. Granted, artillery fights are a lot of RNG. You can still lose to bolt throwers and stuff like that, but in terms of cannons, they are the best. So hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this one. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification every time I upload a new video. You'll be notified. Thanks again. See you next time.